Shalum. Shalom and welcome. Welcome to End Time Unity Protocols, Checks and Balances, a series of messages designed to heighten the awareness of a set-apart awakening nation to realities that includes processes and details. There are things to consider during these end times as it relates to a set-apart awakening nation. If you're tuning in for the first time, my name is Symmanayah, and these are the words I am compelled to present before an awakening set-apart nation. With that said, let's get started with this installment. This installment is to bring focus. It is labeled Leadership, Knowing When to Yield, as we are led by the Spirit of Yahuah, sent in Yahusha's name. Leadership, Knowing When to Yield. Allow me to read the following with regards to the words priests and kings, of which I've been hearing circulate among Yasharal as we are awakening. Many people fail to realize as the Spirit of Yahuah has the liberty and freedom to move about in us, through us, one towards another. This is when we see a demonstration of priests and kings as led by the Spirit of the Most High. And some may say sovereigns opposed to kings. With that said, let me read this. Revelation 1:4-6 says, Yohanan, to the seven assemblies that are in Asia. Favor to you and peace from him who is and who was and who is coming, and from the seven spirits that are before his throne, and from Yahusha Messiah, the trustworthy witness, the firstborn from the dead, and the ruler of sovereigns of the earth. Some translation will say kings of the earth. To him who loved us and washed us from our sins in his own blood, and has made us sovereigns and priests, to his Almighty One and Father, to him be esteem and rule forever and ever. Amen. When it say made us sovereigns and priests, my brothers and sisters, as we walk in obedience to him, this is when we rise up as sovereigns and priests, or as some would say, kings and priests. It doesn't mean me or you by ourselves are a sovereign or a priest. It means that when we walk in obedience to the Most High, we walk in the stature of the priesthood or sovereignty of the Almighty Father as he has structured and established. Many people saying we are going to be sovereigns and priests. If we look at it as ourselves, if we stop at the literal, we miss the message. Do we not know that our bodies are temples or vessels of the Almighty Father, and he works in us and through us? Do we not know the liberty that we receive is the liberty of the Spirit of the Most High to work in us and through us, one towards another, for the building up of his set-apart family? Let me also read 1 Timothy 6:13-16. It reads as follows. In the sight of the Almighty One who gives life to all, and of Messiah Yahusha, who witnessed the good confession before Pontius Pilate, I charge you that you guard the commands spotlessly, blamelessly, until the appearing of our Master Yahusha Messiah, which in his own seasons he shall reveal, the blessed and only ruler, the sovereign of sovereigns and master of masters, who alone has immortality, dwelling in unapproachable light, whom no one has seen and is able to see, to whom be respect and everlasting might. Amen. My brothers and sisters, when you read one version, it says King of Kings. I say to you, my brothers and sisters, we become kings as we walk in obedience to him, yielding to him who is the King of Kings, as he worked in us, through us, one towards another. For the longest, the enemy, the wicked one for the longest have constantly tried to put us in a place to say we're going to be like the Almighty Father. Keep in mind what happened in the garden, how he said, if you eat of this fruit, you'll be like the Almighty One, knowing good and evil. For centuries, man have tried to make a name for himself and detach himself from the living presence and rulership of the Almighty Father. This will ultimately end in total failure. Time has proven over and over again who is the Almighty One, and that is Yahuah, Abba Father, who is the beginning and the end. Let me also read 1 Peter 2:5-20. It says, You also, as living stones, are being built up, a spiritual house, a set-apart priesthood, to offer up spiritual slaughter offerings acceptable to the Almighty One through Yahusha Messiah. Because it is contained in the scriptures, see, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, chosen, precious, and he who believes on him shall by no means be put to shame. This preciousness then is for you who believe, but to those who are disobedient, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone, a stone of stumbling and a rock that makes for falling. Who stumble because they are disobedient to the word to which they also were appointed. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a set-apart nation, a people for a possession, that you should proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into the marvelous light, who once were not a people, but now the people of the Almighty One, who had not obtained compassion, but now obtain compassion. Beloved ones, I appeal to you as sojourners and pilgrims to abstain from fleshly lusts which battle against the being. See, many people fail to realize that fleshly lust wants us to puff our chest and stick our chest out and say, I'm a priest, I'm a king, I'm a sovereign. This is not what the Most High has designated. He has designated us as his vessels, and in his structuring of a set-apart nation, there will be leadership. But overall, he will work in us, through us, as he sees fit. We will see the elements, the behavior of a sovereign or king, as commonly known, or as a priest, as we walk in obedience to him. Let me continue. Having your behavior among the nations good, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, let them, by observing your good works, esteem the Almighty One in a day of visitation. Be subject to every institution of man because of the master, whether to the sovereign as supreme, or to the governors as to those who are sent by him for the punishment of doers of evil and a praise for those who do good. Because such is the desire of the Almighty One, that doing good you should put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. As free, yet not using your freedom as a cloak for evil, but as servants of the Almighty One. You see, this freedom, notice people ignore when they say, but as servants of the Almighty One. And when they say subject to every institution of man because of the master, using wisdom here, my brothers and sisters, knowing when to yield and when to stand firm. Not just take it and say, I'm a sovereign, I'm a priest, and I go up against any and everybody in every institution. No, my brothers and sisters. There's a time and season for all, and the Most High will guide us through. As end times ramp up, we will witness his set-apart spirit leading us on how we are to govern ourselves. Let me go on and continue to read 17th verse to 20. I'm reading 1 Peter. I started with chapter 2, verse 5, and now I want to read, move on to verse 17. Respect all, love the brotherhood, fear the Almighty One, respect the sovereign. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the crooked ones. For this is the favor, if because of conscience towards the Almighty One, anyone bears up under grief, suffering unrighteously. For what credit is there in enduring a beating when you sin? But if you suffer for doing good and you endure, this finds favor with the Almighty One. My brothers and sisters, there will be times when the Almighty Father will lead us to yield. There will be times when we must grow to realize that these earthen vessels have their appointment to the dust from which they came, as it is written in Ecclesiastes. Let us be mindful, my brothers. Again, there's a time to stand strong as a tree planted by the rivers of water, and there's a time to yield. And the outcomes, who knows, but the Almighty Father, and we, in some cases, after the fact. Let me now read Acts 17:24. Yahuah, who made the world and all that is in it, this one being master of heaven and earth, does not dwell in dwelling made with hands. I want to read this, my brothers and sisters, because I'm compelled to reiterate how the Almighty Father dwells in us and works in us for his good pleasure. 1 Corinthians 6:19, or do you not know that your body is the dwelling place of the set-apart Spirit who is in you, which you have from the Almighty One, and you are not your own? Let us understand the wisdom of the Almighty Father as he would have us to understand and discern. Let us learn to discern and obey and respond with accuracy. Let me now read 1 Peter 4:17 through 19. It said, for it is time for judgment to begin from the house of the Almighty One, and it's firstly from us. What is the end of those who do not obey the good news? And if the righteous one is scarcely saved, where shall the wicked and the sinner appear? So then, those who suffer according to the desire of the Almighty One should commit their lives to a trustworthy Creator in doing good. My brothers and sisters, let us be mindful of the power and might of the guidance and the leading of the Spirit of Yahuah sent in Yahusha's name. Let us be mindful of Ephesians 5:15 through 21, which instructs us to be filled with the Spirit, which instructs us to subject ourselves to one another as we are led by the Spirit of Yahuah. In fear of Yahuah, we gain the knowledge of how to respond from one another. Are we not aware that it is written that in the fear of Yahuah is the beginning of knowledge? The knowledge we need to have to subject ourselves to one another is within the guidance of the Spirit of the Almighty Father. Now let me paint a picture, my brothers and sisters, that I believe is relevant to this subject, leadership, knowing when to yield. If you had a circle, or if you looked at a circle, would you be able to know which direction it will travel by just looking at it? Would there be any expectations or anticipation of which direction the circle is going if you're looking at a round circle? Consider this, my brothers and sisters. Consider Proverbs chapter 26, verse 11 through 14. Proverbs chapter 26, verse 11 through 14. It reads, as a dog returns to his own vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. Have you seen a man wise in his own eyes? There is more expectancy for a fool than for him. The lazy one says, there is a lion in the way, a fierce lion in the streets. I want to pause for a minute. Here what it's saying is that the lazy person is given a warning saying that there's a lion in the way, a fierce lion in the street. Now hear what it says, how the lazy one responds. As the door turns on its hinges, so does the lazy one turn on his bed. In other words, he's given a warning saying it's a lion in the streets, it's a lion in the way. But then as time passes, he just goes back to business as usual. Sluggard, lazy, not doing anything. Tell me this, O set apart listener, if a dog is returning to something that is spewed out of its belly, is this not like circling around back to something that made it sick in the first place? Also regarding what I just read, beware, there are those among us who seem to be wise in their own eyes. They are lazy. Yes, there are those you'll see. They warn of impending end time situations and conditions. But once the conversation drops regarding end times and the warning, once the hinges on the door turn, they go on to business as usual until the subject comes up again. They proceed without any regards to what they just talked about. My brothers and sisters, it would be wise to see that this resembles circular motion. This is akin to a dog returning to his own vomit. Believe it or not, there are many mores, teachers, bishops, pastors, shepherds, and other influential individuals who have been going in circles by teaching the same thing over and over again without any progress being made to improve worship and obedience to the Almighty Father, Yahuah. Now also be mindful, there is a difference between a warning. Just like a siren or a warning, they will repeat over and over until no longer needed. Warnings repeat in an effort to save one's life or to prevent one from falling into harm's way. That's a difference. Let me repeat the question that I posed regarding Proverbs 26, 11 through 14. Would you be able to tell the direction of a circle by just looking at it, sitting still? Would you have any expectations? Now hold that thought. I want you to also consider how the production of a sword, a piece of metal, whether short or long, how it is fabricated, how it is fashioned. It starts off with a blunt piece of metal, rounded, blunt, with no sharp edge nor point. But as it is refined, as it is sharpened, it becomes keen, and it has the ability to be used to cut swiftly. The same can be said about an arrow. It begins with a rounded edge before it is sharpened. When sharpening metals, sparks fly. These are the impurities or the pieces that must be removed in order to produce a keen, sharp point in or edge, my brothers and sisters. There's a point to what I'm saying, so stay with me as I continue. You see, my brothers and sisters, in the scriptures, it is written of being like iron, sharpening iron. And I say to you, my brothers and sisters, this is like metals, clashing together to knock off the impurities so that the end result is sharp, keen sword. Proverbs 27:17 says, iron is sharpened by iron, and a man sharpens the face of his friend. So I say to you, O Yasharal, in doing so, when we witness this is when we see actions to restore one another and to set apartness when we stumble and fall. So, with the subject matter of a sword or arrow, now if you look at a sharpened sword or arrowhead with a sharp edge, a keen point, would there be any expectation of which direction it would go? Sure, it must be operated by man, but just looking at it, do you think someone would shoot the arrow with the back of the arrow going forward? Do you think someone would use a sword by trying to swing the handle at someone? No, we understand the direction in which it must go. Now hold that thought regarding the circle, the sword, and the arrow. And let me read this, my brothers and sisters, and I will continue. Hold that thought. Zechariah 9:14-16 says, and Yahuah shall appear for them, and his arrow go forth like lightning, and the master Yahuah sound with the shofar, and he shall go with whirlwinds from the south. Yahuah of hosts shall shield them, and they shall devour and trample on sling stones, and they shall drink, roar as if with wine, and they shall be filled like basins, like the corners of the slaughter place. And Yahuah, their Almighty One, shall save them in that day as the flock of his people, for the stones of the diadem sparkling over his land. Notice how in the 14th verse, and what I just read was Isaiah chapter 9, verse 14-16. I want to bring your attention to the 14th verse specifically in Zechariah 9, the 14th verse. And notice how it says, he shall appear, and his arrow go forth as lightning. So do you think that arrow is blunt, or do you think it's sharp, that it will pierce? Now let me read Hebrews 4:12-13. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 12 and 13. For the word of the Almighty One is living and working and sharper than any two-edged sword, cutting through even to the dividing of being and spirit and joints and marrow, and able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. And there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all are naked and laid bare before the eyes of him with whom is our account. I say to you, O Yasharal, rise up, set apart Yasharal, for as we begin to take shape, we will be able to see leadership in such a way it will resemble the point of an arrow. It will resemble the sharpness of a sword. It will resemble the ability to demonstrate precision as we move closer to the Almighty Father. Rise up, my brothers and sisters. We will begin to realize how just meeting on Shabbat, just going to gatherings during feast times and doing the same thing over and over again is unwise. It's as going around in circles. There's much to learn and gain when led by the Spirit of Yahuwah in Yahusha's name. There is much to receive on Shabbat and any other day. There's much to receive on feast times, knowing their purposes, knowing their understanding, and there's endless instructions that are available to us who are able to hear and to see. Doing the same thing just over and over again is as a dog returning to his vomit. My brothers and sisters, as the Most High begins to sharpen, refine, discipline his children, prepare the set-apart awakening nation to be gathered from the four corners of the earth, we will realize that expectations will grow. We will recognize warnings and living instructions, and we will respond accordingly. Let us not be as the unwise, lazy, talking about warnings, but just going about business as usual. My brothers and sisters, set apart Yasharal will come to realize this day, as end times move about, it requires leadership to be in a position of knowing when to yield, because there will not be so many leaders that it is as a round, blunt instrument. There will be the image as an arrowhead sharpened with a keen point. There will be the image as a sword with a sharp edge, as the chosen set-apart leaders take their place and execute the task they have been given. Yasharal, oh Yasharal, we have a destination. This destination included returning to the promised land. Whether you know it or not, there will be millions gathered from the four corners of the earth in the coming days. I have stated that when you compare these millions to the total population of the planet, though the numbers are large, it will still be a remnant when compared to the total population. The 144,000 Hebrews, Abraham, along with other nations, a great multitude, including Hebrews and Gentiles that are made one by Yahusha HaMashiach, as written in Revelation 7th chapter, will rise, my brothers and sisters, out of the extreme humbling times ahead. We will witness the movement of Yasharal with leadership that have yielded to their prospective positions, some that may have stepped back, some that may have been removed. But we will see Yasharal move with the precision of an arrow fired by the hand of the Almighty Father, or as a sharpened sword wielded by the Almighty Father and those whom he is directing and using to fulfill what is written. What this means, my brothers and sisters, if there were a multitude of individuals in leadership, it could be difficult to establish a sense of direction. It would be like a rounded, blunt instrument. But by us seeing Yasharal taking shape like a sharp pointed arrowhead or a keen sword, we will begin to have the expectations to look for the leadership positions and how they fit into the plan of the Almighty Father. Soon and very soon, my brothers and sisters, we will discover that there are individuals among us that must and will yield. Some will be restored and sharpened and fashioned to be more powerful than they ever could have imagined as they are led by the Almighty Father. And there will be some leaders that will seek to preserve their ego, push for our own hidden agenda, undiscerning, unlearned, and they will face a different judgment, my brothers and sisters. Yasharal, oh Yasharal, the common structure for a set-apart nation will begin to take shape clearly. And leadership will change. There will be a transformation. It will be wise to accept that many who are leaders now will find themselves relinquishing their position as Yasharal is gathered. There will be some leaders who will take on a different position. And there are those that will discover their true chosen position. And it may not be the leadership position that they have already. There will be leaders who will face discipline and repent and be renewed and rise up in the strength and power of the Almighty One. And there will be leaders that will face sickness and possibly death in order to bring them into subjection to the will of the Almighty Father's plan. There are and will be more battles with mores and teachers or anyone in leadership as judgment ramps up in the house of the Almighty Father. Yes, there are battles. Some of those battles are obedient ones, rendering reproof and correction to bring about a more improved body of set-apart children of the Almighty Father. And in this mix, my brothers and sisters, are those who are wicked, stirring up strife and evil. But we will grow to discern, my brothers and sisters, what the spirit of our teacher, our guide, Yahusha Mashiach, has to say on these matters. During extreme humbling times, we will witness the ability to discern and respond with precision, knowing when to purge someone from our midst, when to come away, knowing what to do regarding those who we identify as disobedient, and how to respond to the obedience of the Spirit of the Almighty Father. My brothers and sisters, the time is now to pray for our leaders, for many will lose their position in leadership due to their rebelliousness and inability to discern what the Spirit of Yahuah is actually saying to them and to the body of Yasharal, set apart Yasharal. Egos and emotions are about to get ugly in many cases, but never forget the Most High has promised discipline. And in that discipline, my brothers and sisters, we will witness a refinement that will bring about the emergence of the 144,000 and great multitude, as well as those who will have the strength and fortitude to look physical death in the face and be martyrs for Yahusha's name. Prepare to witness the power and might of the chosen leadership of Abba Yahuah, led by his Spirit sent in Yahusha's name. Prepare to witness their emergence. There will be shock and awe. There will be many surprises ahead as those chosen to lead, set apart Yasharal, becomes visible. All doubt will be removed. Prepare to witness weeping and crying, mourning over those whom many thought would be their leader until the end, but were sadly mistaken. Never forget, our day of shouting hallelujah will be many as we recognize the plan of the Most High unfold even more clearer than now. Know this, my brothers and sisters, there will be some leaders among us who will carry out their duties until such time as they are directed and then step aside. There are those who will be leaders who will grow strong and stronger each passing day and will wield the instructions that are given to them to direct Yasharal, set apart Yasharal. True set apart leadership must and will come to demonstrate what it means, knowing when to yield. Prepare to witness the shape of a structured set-apart nation, complete with the resemblance of a keen arrow and sharpened sword. When witnessing this phenomenal transition, there will be no doubt to which direction we are headed. All doubt will be removed that is necessary to build our expectation and lead to our responding with precision as our eyes and ears discover the correct direction we must travel as it relates to being gathered from the four corners of the earth, or as it relates to being in position where we make our final stand for Yahusha Mashiach if we are to be martyrs for him. You see, not everyone will be gathered to the promised land before the physical return of Yahusha Mashiach. Each of us have a task, and we will discover what that is in the coming of days. My brothers and sisters, movement will come, and it requires leadership. A sense of direction will come. It requires leadership. It requires the shape, the structure of a point. Each individual among the set-apart family of Yasharal have a task. We have duties that must and will be fulfilled in the coming days ahead. There will literally be 144,000 Hebrews, or Abraham, along with a great multitude consisting of other Hebrews and Gentiles, but together as one in Yahusha Mashiach, we will rise and we will fulfill what is written. Current leadership will grow and begin to demonstrate that they understand that knowing when to yield is critical in these passing moments. And like I said, there will be a shaking. There will be a removal. Whether we are coming away or whether they are being purged, those who are disobedient and undiscerning. Let me read this as I begin to wrap up. Isaiah 11:12. He shall raise a banner for the nations and gather the outcasts of Yasharal and assemble the dispersed of Yehudah from the four corners of the earth. And if you read, that was Isaiah 11:12. If you read Isaiah 43:5-7, it talks about being gathered. And he said, those made for his esteem in the 7th verse. There will be a final exodus. There will be a gathering. Visit Isaiah 11:12. Visit Isaiah 43:5-7. Also consider Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 17 through 21. Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 17 through 21. There are those who believe there will be a final exodus before the physical return of Yahusha HaMashiach, and there are those who do not. Be encouraged, my brothers and sisters. Though we have begun facing the most challenging times, in spite all the noise and confusion, in spite all the different interpretations and belief, the set-apart children of Yahuah, led by his spirit, sent in Yahusha's name, will emerge victorious and successful. We'll fulfill what is written. Be encouraged. Our redemption draw near, nearer than most can imagine. I am very much aware that knowing when to yield is necessary, and that it is indeed a hard task for many in leadership. But what is and must come to be will prove to occur by the orders of the Almighty Father. Prepare to witness set-apart Yasharal. Prepare to witness our final leadership rise. Prepare to see the emergence of the soon-to-arrive two witnesses of Revelation in chapter 11. For I am compelled to believe they will be the last two ultimate physical shepherds of an awakening set-apart nation. I am compelled to believe that the two witnesses will indeed demonstrate leadership and when to yield. They will work with elders and counselors. As they begin to emerge, we will see structure that resembles a keen arrow, a sharp sword, and something much more powerful: the ways of the Almighty Father, Yahuah. Know this, my brothers and sisters, just as our leadership must move to knowing when to yield, so must we know when to yield. When to yield to when the Spirit of Yahusha is speaking to us and through us one towards another. As I come to wrap up this installment, I want you to know, my brothers and sisters, there are two more installments to this series, Unity, End Time Unity Protocol, before I transition to the next phase in my journey, which will be reflected on this YouTube channel and more. If for any reason I am banned from any media site, know this: I am on other sites and will press forward. I also have a website, Watchman.net, as well as Watchman.com. I, my brother and sister, know of no other direction to turn. I will continue to press forward into the things I believe the Most High is directing me. If for some reason you are seeking me, and I know it's not about me, know this, that I use the same name, pronounced Symmanayah, and it is spelled Symmanayah. Symmanayah. I use the same name across all platforms, my brothers and sisters. Pray and watch, O Yasharal. And I know it's not about me, not at all. It's not about me, but I, as your fellow servant, know that it is about worshiping and obeying the Almighty Father. And it's for this reason, out of obedience, that I and you must do what we are called to do. Upon completing the next two installments, I will begin posting more than just audio. I will introduce myself in video and seek to grow closer as I believe I am directed. As I state often, again, I know it is not about me, but it is about worshiping and obeying, doing the will of the Almighty Father Yahuah in Yahusha's name. Until next time, O Yasharal, let us be mindful that leadership will grow to know when to yield, and we will learn and know when to yield. A set-apart nation is awakening, and structure will come to be. I invite you to continue listening, my brothers and sisters. Examine the words that I present and seek to discern whether there is life in these words or not. For as for me, I must go and press forward along this path as I believe I'm compelled to do. Until next time, O set-apart nation, Yasharal, O set-apart brother, my sister, I bid you Shalum.